I used to be the kind of woman who hated crying in front of people. It felt like weakness. Like a door I couldn't close once it was opened. But that night, the night I said, "I'm fine," with salt on my cheeks and my voice barely holding itself together, I think I wanted him to hear the truth in my silence. I think I was begging him to see me again. I'm Elena. I'm 35, and I don't recognize the woman I've become when I'm with the man I love. I guess that's what's been eating at me. 4 years ago, when Jake and I moved into our little blue house at the end of Brookview Lane, everything felt full. Full of color, of promise, of us. We were the couple people envied, always touching, teasing, kissing in grocery store aisles like teenagers who never learned boundaries. He'd pull me into him in the middle of cooking dinner, his hands on my waist, whisper something utterly stupid and sweet just to make me laugh. He used to touch me like I was a flame he didn't mind getting burned by. Now he touches me like he's flipping a switch. Habitual. Mechanical. A hand on my back when I walk by, lips to my forehead in a rush before work, a goodnight kiss that never lingers. Last week, I kissed him, really kissed him, just to see what would happen. He blinked like I'd startled him. Then smiled, polite and tight. "You okay?" That was the first time I lied. "I'm fine." I should have said, "I miss you." I should have said, "Why don't you look at me the same way?" I should have said, "I feel like I'm sleeping beside a stranger who still knows how I take my coffee, but not how I feel when I cry in the shower." We're not broken. That's the hard part. There's no big betrayal. No screaming fights or bruised doors or ultimatums. Just a slow, aching erosion. 1,000 tiny silences filling the cracks where words used to live. Tonight started like any other Thursday. Jake came home late. I was already in bed, pretending to read. He crawled in beside me, kissed the back of my shoulder, wrapped an arm around my waist. It should have felt safe. It used to. But lately, his touch feels more like a reminder, "I'm here, this is what we do, good night." I lay there, stiff, until he fell asleep. Then I cried. Quietly. Stupidly. Into the pillow we both picked out at Target last spring. He must have heard me. Or maybe he felt the way my breath started stuttering. Maybe the stillness finally made a sound loud enough to wake him. He asked again, softly this time. "Elle, what's wrong?" I told him I was fine. And he stayed. He didn't pull away. He didn't fall back asleep. He just held me. Tight. Not like a habit, but like a question. I wanted to say so much. But how do you explain the kind of grief that comes from still being in love with someone who stopped seeing you? I couldn't find the words. So I let the tears speak. I don't know how long he held me. But somewhere in the silence between us, I thought back to last autumn, the exact moment something shifted. It was a Saturday. We'd gone to a wedding. I wore that green dress he used to lose his breath over. He said I looked nice. Not beautiful. Not damn. Just nice. I laughed it off. We danced. We smiled for photos. But later that night, when he turned away from me in bed without a second glance, I realized, I couldn't remember the last time I felt wanted. That was the moment. And now, here I am. 35. In the arms of a man I love, who still loves me, but not in the same language. And I'm trying to figure out if staying means saving us, or losing more of myself in the silence. Jake's a paramedic. 12-hour shifts, trauma calls at 3 a.m., adrenaline crashes, blood he never talks about. I've always admired that about him, the way he can stay calm when someone's dying, then walk through our door and ask what I want for dinner like he didn't just watch a 19-year-old bleed out in the back of an ambulance. But I think somewhere along the way, that calm followed him home. Into us. That night after he stayed, after I told him I was fine and he didn't press me, something changed, or maybe I just noticed it more. The next morning, he made breakfast. Scrambled eggs with too much pepper, coffee the way I like it, splash of oat milk, 2 sugars. He kissed the top of my head and said, "See? We're okay." And I smiled, because that's what you do when someone's trying. But inside, I wanted to scream. "No, Jake, we're not okay. You just don't know how to ask me why." Later, while I was folding laundry, he came up behind me and slipped his arms around my waist. His lips brushed my neck. "Maybe we go away this weekend," he murmured, his hands inching lower. "No phones. Just us." I flinched. Not because I didn't want him, but because that's always where he goes, touch before talk, body before heart. And I used to love that about him. The way his hands knew me like second nature. But now, it feels like a shortcut. Like he thinks kissing me will solve the silence. Like if he keeps holding me, I won't notice he doesn't ask about my day anymore. I stepped away gently. "I've got a lot to get done today." He blinked. Hurt, but covering it quickly. "Right. Sorry. I'll go start the car." The air between us stayed tight the whole drive to his mom's. He cracked a joke about how she'd probably try to feed us leftovers from Christmas, in July, and I forced a laugh. I watched his profile as he drove, jaw tight, fingers drumming on the wheel, eyes never quite meeting mine when we stopped at red lights. He thinks I'm pushing him away. But I just want to be seen first. Heard. Asked. Understood. In the kitchen later, while his mom talked about someone's divorce and the rising cost of grapes, Jake put his hand on my lower back. Possessive. Familiar. I froze. I wanted to pull away, and I hated that. He caught the tension in my shoulders. He leaned in. "You okay?" God, that question again. I nodded. "I'm fine." He pulled me aside when we got home. Shut the door softly, like he was scared of the answer. "Elena, are you mad at me?" I stood there, holding a grocery bag like a shield. "No, you've been distant." "Yes," I wanted to say. "Because you keep touching me like I'm a puzzle you can solve with your hands, and I need you to see me, Jake." But instead, I said, "I'm tired." And he looked down. Like he believed me. Like that was easier than the truth. I know he loves me. He shows it in the ways he understands, making sure my car has gas, fixing the drawer that always sticks, grabbing my favorite chips at the gas station. But I don't want Doritos. I want conversation. I want connection. I want him to ask me why I cry in the shower and wait for the answer. We sleep back to back that night. His hand finds mine under the covers. I let it. I want it. But I also want more. The physical is his love language. But lately, it's felt like someone speaking French to me in the middle of a storm, beautiful, but useless when I'm drowning. I wonder if he even knows I'm slipping under. And I wonder how many times I'll say, "I'm fine," before he realizes I'm not. It started when he reached for me in the hallway. I was unloading groceries, sweaty from the July heat, my hair sticking to the back of my neck, fingers sore from hauling plastic bags up the porch steps alone because he was still on the phone with his buddy from work. He came up behind me, all confidence and easy charm, and smacked my ass like it was a reflex. Like we were still in that phase where it was playful, flirty. Fun. But I tensed. The plastic bag slipped from my hand and thudded on the floor. Apples rolled out across the tiles. "Hey," he said, laughing a little. "Sorry, babe." Couldn't resist. I bent down to gather the apples, not looking at him. "Can you not do that right now?" There was a pause, brief, but I felt it in the way the air tightened between us. "I was just messing around," he said, defensive. "We always used to," yeah, I cut in, standing too fast. "We used to." He went quiet. I didn't mean to snap. I wanted to laugh. I wanted it to feel like it used to, light, sexy, familiar. But all I felt was annoyance. A kind of tired ache in my chest I couldn't name. Later, I was chopping onions when he came up behind me again, this time slower, gentler. He wrapped his arms around my waist, kissed my shoulder. "You smell good," he whispered into my neck. I held the knife a little tighter. Let's not fight, okay? I've missed you." He nuzzled into my hair. "Let me make it up to you." He turned me around, gently took the knife from my hand and set it down. He kissed me. Soft, intentional. The kind of kiss I used to crave at the end of a long day. But now? Now it felt like something I had to pass through. I kissed him back out of memory, not desire. His hands moved to my hips, then slid under the hem of my shirt, fingertips warm against my lower back. I pulled away. "Can we just finish dinner?" His eyes clouded with hurt. Did I do something wrong? I shook my head, trying to keep my voice even. "I'm just not in the mood right now." He stepped back like I'd slapped him. "It's not just right now, Elle." I didn't answer. Because he wasn't wrong. And I didn't know how to explain it without breaking something between us. I stirred the pasta sauce with too much force. He left the kitchen quietly. And I stood there, staring at the tomato-stained wooden spoon like it held answers. I used to want him. God, I used to ache for him. We couldn't keep our hands off each other in the beginning. But now, when he touches me, I feel this odd mix of guilt and pressure, like I should respond a certain way, and when I don't, something dies a little in both of us. It's not that I don't love him. I do. But I'm not sure he knows me anymore. Not the me who's lonely at the dinner table, or the me who's desperate to be asked how I'm really feeling. The me who wants to be held because I'm falling apart, not because it's been a week since we had sex. I went to bed early that night. Turned away from him. And as I lay there staring at the shadows on the wall, the question echoed through my mind, heavy, shameful, exhausting: why does everything have to turn into sex? It happened over takeout. Thai food. Our Friday routine. We were sitting on the couch, him in sweats, me in the oversized hoodie I always wore when I needed armor. Some rerun was playing on TV, half muted, and I was picking at my pad thai without tasting it. Jake reached over and brushed a noodle off my chin with his thumb, laughing gently. "Messy girl." I smiled, small and automatic. Then he reached for my hand, laced his fingers through mine, and said, too casually, "We should book that cabin for next weekend. Just us. No distractions." I knew what he meant. I knew what he wanted it to be. Alone time. Connection. Sex, maybe. Probably. And something in me just cracked. "I don't want to go to a cabin," I said, sharper than I meant to. He blinked. "Okay. We don't have to." It was just a thought. "No, Jake," I said, putting the container down. "It's always just a thought. And they're always your thoughts. Your plans. Your ideas to fix us without even asking how I'm doing." He looked blindsided. "Where is this coming from?" I stood up. My hands were trembling. "You keep trying to throw weekends and sex at a problem you won't even look at. You haven't really talked to me in months, Jake. You haven't asked how I feel, what I need. You just keep touching me and hoping I'll stop pulling away." He stood too, arms crossed, his tone shifting. "I have been trying. I've been showing up. Making plans. Staying up with you when you cry and say nothing. I don't know what else you want." "I want you to see me," I snapped. "Not just touch me. Not kiss me when I'm clearly not okay. Not turn everything into some romantic gesture just so you can feel like we're fine." His jaw tensed. "So I can feel like we're fine?" And that's when it happened. I started crying. Not the delicate kind. The ugly, hot kind, the kind that takes you by surprise and makes you feel stupid for letting it go this far. "I said I was fine that night," I choked out. "And you just held me like it was supposed to fix it." "But I was falling apart, Jake. I was begging you with my silence. And you didn't ask. You just stayed. He looked stunned. And something in him went still. You didn't want me to stay? He asked, voice quiet. I sat back down on the couch, wiping my face. I wanted you to ask me why I was crying. Not just hold me like a sad pet. I needed you to see that I wasn't okay. But you wanted to believe I was, because that was easier than hearing the truth. He stayed standing. Silent. Processing. Or maybe just stunned by the emotional whiplash. For a second, I wished he'd yell. Say something. Anything. But he just stood there, eyes flicking toward the floor, and then finally said, I don't know what to say to you anymore. And he walked into the bedroom, quietly shutting the door. I sat on the couch, legs curled up under me, hands still trembling. I felt like a monster. He was trying. In the only language he knew. He made me breakfast. He stayed up with me. He touched me, held me, kissed me like it meant something, and I recoiled. I rejected. I accused. But I also needed more. I needed connection before contact. Conversation before kisses. To be seen before I was touched. And now? I felt hollow. Guilt washed over me in waves. For how I said it. For how long I held it in. For turning what was supposed to be a quiet Friday night into a silent war. I pressed my hands into my face and whispered the same words I'd been whispering for months. Why does everything have to turn into sex? The days after that fight passed in a kind of quiet that made everything louder. The clink of a spoon in the sink. The creak of floorboards when he walked past me. The way he said, I'm going for a run, instead of, want to come? The way he turned off the bedroom light without kissing my shoulder goodnight. It wasn't angry. It was worse than that. It was distant. We didn't fight again. There were no slammed doors, no cold shoulders in the obvious sense. But something had shifted. The warmth that used to hum in the background of our lives had disappeared, like a radio station gone out of tune. Static now. Always static. Jake stopped trying. He still came home. Still brought in the mail. Still loaded the dishwasher after dinner. But he didn't reach for me anymore. Didn't make offhand comments about how my hair smelled or suggest weekend plans. He was polite. Civil, kind, even. And utterly gone. I watched him one night while he sat at the edge of the bed, rubbing his temples after a long shift. His uniform shirt hung limp on the chair. There were shadows under his eyes. He looked tired. Not just physically. The kind of tired you carry in your bones. In your spirit. I wondered if I'd done that. Because I wasn't the only one hurting. And maybe that was the part one hadn't let myself see until now. Jake didn't know how to talk about feelings the way I did. He didn't know how to unpack layers of emotional nuance over dinner. But he'd tried, in his way. Through his hands. Through presence. Through offerings of plans and touch and proximity. And I pushed him away. Again and again. With flinches. With silences. With tears I didn't explain. I told myself it was because he didn't ask. But maybe, he stopped asking because every time he tried, I turned it into a test. Now I missed him in ways I didn't know how to admit. I missed his dumb jokes during car rides. The way he'd randomly squeeze my thigh at red lights. I missed his hand on my lower back when we crossed the street. The way his voice softened when he said my name, Elle. I wanted that again. God, I wanted him. But not just his body. I wanted to feel like us again. But every time I passed him in the hallway, every time I felt the space between our bodies grow wider, I didn't know how to close it. What would I say? Sorry I made you feel like your love wasn't enough? Sorry I punished you for not loving me in exactly the way I needed, instead of meeting you halfway? One night, I came home late from work. He'd left me a plate in the fridge, covered in foil, with a sticky note that just said, "Eat, you always forget." I stared at that note longer than I'd like to admit. He still cared. He was still there. Just buried under his own disappointment. His own quiet sadness. It hit me then, I wasn't the only one who'd felt unseen. I sat on the couch with my knees hugged to my chest, that little sticky note in my hand, and I thought about the cabin trip. About his hands in mine. About the way he stayed up with me in silence the night I cried. And I knew I had a choice. I could stay in this limbo, mourning the man who still lived in my house, or I could reach back. Not with resentment. Not with expectations. But with a real effort. An honest one. The kind that risks rejection. The kind that says, "I see your pain, too." So I stood up, heart in my throat, and walked toward our room. I hadn't decided what I was going to say. But I knew I was going to try. Because if I walked away now, it wouldn't be because we stopped loving each other, it would be because we stopped fighting for it. And maybe there was still something left worth saving when I walked into the bedroom. He was already lying on top of the covers, one arm flung over his eyes, as if shielding himself from the world. I stood there for a second, unsure if I was brave enough. Then I sat down at the edge of the bed, not touching him, just close. "I read your note," I said quietly. He didn't move, but I felt something shift in the air. Maybe tension. Maybe just breath. I picked at the seam of the blanket. I'd been thinking about everything I said. Everything I didn't say. Still nothing. But he didn't get up. That was something. "I miss us," I said, voice catching. "But I think I miss a version of us that doesn't exist anymore." He finally moved, slowly, like it cost him something, and sat up beside me. We didn't face each other. "You said you wanted me to ask why you were crying that night," he murmured. I nodded. "I didn't ask," he said. "Because I thought if I just held you, maybe it'd be enough. And I was scared it wouldn't be." His voice was calm. Heavy. "I know," I whispered. "I think I was scared too." We sat there in silence. Close, but not touching. "Not really. I'm tired of trying the wrong way," he said. "Tired of feeling like nothing I do lands. Like I'm just guessing and hoping you don't pull away again." "I know," I repeated, barely audible. Then he turned to me, and for the first time in weeks, our eyes met and stayed. "Elle. I love you. But I don't know how to keep doing this when it feels like we've been speaking different languages for months." I reached out instinctively and placed my hand over his. "Maybe we don't have to keep doing this. Maybe we figure out something new." He looked down at our hands. "Do you really think we can get back to what we were?" I shook my head. "No. But maybe we don't need to. Maybe we find something more honest. Not perfect. Just real." He didn't say anything. And I didn't push. Instead, I leaned forward and pressed a kiss to his forehead. His eyes closed, just for a second, like he was letting it wash over him. Like he needed that exact kind of gentleness and couldn't ask for it. That night, he didn't stay in bed with me. He went to the couch. But he left the door open. And I lay there staring at the ceiling, not crying for once, just thinking about how sometimes love doesn't end with a bang. Sometimes it drifts, like smoke, and you have to decide whether you'll chase it or let it go. We hadn't fixed anything. Not yet. But that night, I didn't say, "I'm fine." And for now, maybe that was enough. Final reflection, Elena's voice, you know, when people ask how relationships fall apart, they expect some big event. A betrayal. A lie. A fight that ends with someone slamming a door. But that's not how it happened with Jake and me. We didn't fall apart. We unraveled, one silent dinner, one missed question, one forced kiss at a time. I used to think desire was about chemistry. That if someone touched you the right way, you'd feel wanted. Loved. Seen. But now I know, you can be touched every day and still feel completely invisible. What I needed wasn't more sex or more flowers or even more effort. I needed presence. I needed to be asked what I was feeling, and I needed to be honest enough to answer. I needed to stop saying, "I'm fine," when what I really meant was, "I'm lost. And I don't know how to reach you anymore." I also learned that love isn't a guarantee. Even when it's real. Even when it's deep. If it's not nurtured with truth and emotional intimacy, it can start to feel like obligation. Jake did love me. I still believe that. And I loved him too. But love without understanding is like holding someone's hand while they drown. You're close, but you're not saving each other. In the end, we didn't choose to stay in the same way. He moved out 3 weeks later. It wasn't loud. There were no screaming matches or last-minute apologies. Just quiet packing. A hug at the door. Take care of yourself, Elle. And me nodding, even though my chest was burning. And you know what? There was love in that goodbye. A different kind. A love that knew when to let go. Now, I'm still learning how to be with myself. How to speak my needs without shame. How to let someone in without losing pieces of me along the way. So if you're listening to this, if you're nodding because something in your chest just clicked, please, don't wait as long as I did to speak your truth. Don't say, "I'm fine," when you're not. Because the people who truly love you, they'll stay. But only if they can see you.